Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of I gotta get this right now. The Polite Society News podcast. Got a little bit of an explanation coming up, but before I get to that, I want to introduce my co-host. It is still Legal Friday. We're still talking with Alex Ooley. Alex, of course, is Forge of Freedom podcast. Alex, thanks for coming on board today, man.
Yeah, great to be with you, Paul. Thanks for having me.
As I get started here, I wanna do a little bit of an explanation. I am, and I almost said it off the start. Uh, I am the former deputy director of new media for the Second Amendment Foundation. I'm not going to say anything more about that other than mutual decision. Going forward, um, what used to be the bullet will now be Polite Society News. I'm going to tie everything together under my Polite Society brand. I had a conversation with Amanda Suffolk today, and she goes, "Weren't you paying attention at AmCon?" And I'm like, "I'm broadcasting when I'm at AmCon. I don't have enough time to watch and absorb and broadcast. I'm pretty much making sure that everything's going off okay." And she was like, "You really need to keep everything under the Polite Society banner." And so that's what I'm doing. Now, instead of the bullet, this is Polite Society News. I want to remind you, if you're watching us and you have a comment or a question for Alex, let me back up one more time. Alex is an attorney in Southern Indiana. Nothing he says or nothing we say is legal advice. And if you have a question or comment for Alex, understanding he doesn't give legal advice here, put it in the comments section and we'll get your comments up as we go through the show and discuss them as we go through. And let me pull social media together. Finally, we are set, I think, Alex. First thing I want to talk about is we had a decision while we were down at Gun Rights Policy Conference in the Duncan v. Bonta case. It came down exactly the way we wanted it to come down. California's mag ban is illegal, is unconstitutional. And I thought that was the end of it. I thought the Ninth Circuit sent it back down. The Supreme Court sent it back to the Ninth Circuit, said, look at Bruin, rule on it. Ninth Circuit sent it back down to St. Benitez, said, look over Bruin, rule on it. I thought this was the end of it, but I guess it's not.
Right. It's basically like Bruin came out, so start over. And so this case was filed quite a few years ago, I think in 2017 or 18. And it got to the Ninth Circuit. And of course, this, for those who don't know, this is the high-capacity magazine ban in California. It's the case challenging that ban. And it got to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in California, and the Ninth Circuit upheld the ban, said it was constitutional. And that remained the case until the Bruin decision came down in June of 2022. And this Duncan v. Bonta case was one of the cases that was GVR'd by the Supreme Court, which means that it was granted review, it was vacated, and it was remanded back down to the lower court for reconsideration in light of the decision in Bruin. And so Judge Benitez in the district court, which is the lowest level court in the federal court system, but he's a district court judge in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and he issued an opinion, a 71-page opinion. It was beautifully written. It was highly footnoted, lots of sources, and if people have an opportunity to read it, they should. It's great. In fact, I'll read just a short portion of it here in just a moment. But he said that the high-capacity, so-called high-capacity, what I would refer to as a standard capacity magazine, maybe even less than standard capacity. It bans magazines over 10 rounds. He said that that law was unconstitutional and that there would be an injunction but he stayed the injunction to give the state an opportunity to appeal. And normally, when that happens, the state would appeal, and the case would be considered by a three-judge panel in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals at the appellate level.
Mm-hmm.
But the Ninth Circuit engaged in some shenanigans here and skipped the normal procedure of a three-judge panel and went straight to the en banc panel, which is a panel of 11 judges in the Ninth Circuit, knowing that there was a good chance that the three-judge panel would uphold Judge Benitez's decision and enjoin the high-capacity magazine ban in California. So they skipped the step. They went straight to en banc, of course, trying to uphold the magazine ban as long as they can.
Now, I have to admit, I'm stealing this straight from your podcast. I watched the most recent version today as I was starting to set up for today's podcast. This is a little bit of a mixed blessing, isn't it? In that it cuts out the year it may take for a three-judge panel to get through the decision and then go to the en banc.
Yeah, there may be a silver lining here, and I got that from the California Rifle and Pistol Association, which is the organization that brought this case challenging the high-capacity magazine ban. And they had a blog post from, I think it was from September 30th, a little over a week ago, or approximately a week ago, that said basically the silver lining here is that by skipping the three-judge panel, this case could be heard by the Supreme Court next session. So that's the good news. It may accelerate this, fast track this case getting to the Supreme Court.
All right. And then the other part of this is my memory tells me, and my memory isn't perfect by any means, my memory tells me the Ninth Circuit has something like 19 judges, and so do they get, I'm wondering if they're going to handpick the judges that hear this.
Yes, so I think there are over 20 judges in the Ninth Circuit. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but only 11 constitute the full panel, the en banc panel. Most circuits, in the Ninth Circuit is one of the largest circuits in the country, if not the largest. I think it is the largest, in fact. So in some circuits, the full panel would be all of the judges in that circuit. But in California, or in the Ninth Circuit rather, it's only 11 because there are simply too many judges to make it efficient to hear a case by all of the judges. So
Well,
I'm not sure what that process is. Each circuit has a different set of rules to select the judges for either the three-judge panel or for the en banc hearing. So I'm not familiar with those rules in the Ninth Circuit. I'm not admitted to practice in the Ninth Circuit. I'm not familiar with the nuances of those sorts of rules, but it will be 11 judges.
Yeah, let me put this up. This is, and we've used this before. Matter of fact, I think the last time we used it on the air, you were with me. These are the geographic boundaries of the circuits. The Ninth Circuit has California, Arizona, Nevada, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, Washington, Alaska, Hawaii, Guam, and I believe that's the Marianas down there in the very corner. So
Yeah,
that is a
it's
huge
massive.
area.
Yeah, it's massive and not only geographically diverse, but also politically diverse. So, I mean, you've got Montana and some other states in there, along with California. And so you're going to have a wide disparity of political viewpoints in that large of a district. So it's inevitable that you're going to have these sorts of cases come out of the Ninth Circuit.
Well, I saw a story from the California Rifle and Pistol Association. I'm going to go ahead and bring that up real quick on my second monitor here. But the CRPA has filed an opposition to staying the injunction beyond what is currently, I believe it's October 9th. So on Monday, October 10th. which actually, let me pull a calendar up here because I don't even know what day it is anymore. Tuesday. They've opposed in they filed a motion opposing extending the stay past then. Honestly, I think, Alex, we're just going to have to hang on and see what happens here. I mean, when we heard about this at when we were at GRPC, I was thinking, okay, now's the time for Magpool to crank up the production lines and start shipping to California, start shipping to Washington, because the Ninth Circuit is the Ninth Circuit. Obviously, I don't know what I'm talking about all the time, so
Yeah, I think the Ninth Circuit is likely to allow the stay to remain. So that means the law can be enforced. Now, I'm just guessing. I don't know that. I don't have a good sense for that. But that's I think the most likely outcome given the composition of the Ninth Circuit. Now, my understanding is that the Ninth Circuit has approximately 45% of its judges that were appointed by a Republican president. And so it's got still a fairly large percentage of Republican or judges that were appointed by Republicans. Nevertheless, I think that the 11-judge en banc panel is likely to be composed of judges that are more likely to side on the side of the state here, the state of California, and uphold the ban. So I think that this is going to have to be eventually resolved by the United States Supreme Court, unfortunately.
well, and I want to bounce around a little bit since we're talking a little bit about the Supreme Court. We've got this case coming up in about a month. They're going to be hearing oral arguments in the Rahimi case. And I caught this off of Four Boxes Diner. I believe I watched the video yesterday. There have been some 21 amicus briefs, Friends of the Court briefs, that have been filed. SAF, Firearms Policy Coalition, Gun Owners of America, as much as I hate to say it, National Association for Gun Rights, and many, many others are filing Friends of the Court briefs in favor of freedom on the Rahimi side. I'm heartened there. What I'm worried about is the legacy media is so far in the tank for the gun grabbers that they are framing this as, oh my goodness, now wife beaters will be able to go buy a gun right after they beat their wives, and I just don't. I don't see a lot of that happening.
I think this is coming, as you mentioned or alluded to, this is coming up for oral argument November 7th. But one thing I want to mention just briefly about the Duncan case, the high capacity magazine case, before I get into Rahimi, is that I don't know how the 11-judge panel is selected in the Ninth Circuit, but it is going to be the same panel that decided it originally. So that's yeah, yeah. So that's an important factor.
Now they did not rule on the side of freedom the first time.
Right, right. Which means probably going to have the same outcome this time, I'm guessing. Of course, we have Bruin this time, and they have the guidance given by Bruin, but we've seen quite a few federal court judges simply ignore the guidance from Bruin, and I suspect we're going to see the same sort of behavior out of the Ninth Circuit en banc panel. So that was an important note to make. The other thing is that you've mentioned all these amicus briefs that have been filed in the Rahimi case, which are briefs that are filed by entities or organizations that are not parties to the case, but they file these briefs as interested parties, and they typically support one side or the other, and they may address particular small issues in the case, but there have, as you said, been numerous of these briefs filed in the Rahimi case. And a great resource for this, we've talked about it before, is SCOTUS blog. They have a page that links to all of the filings in the Rahimi case, including all of these amicus briefs. So if people want to go to SCOTUS blog and search for Rahimi, which is Rahimi, they can find these amicus briefs that have been filed. And to your point, too, about these protective orders, well, to your point about this case being cast as a license for wife beaters to carry a firearm, I think one of the best amicus briefs for that particular concern is the one filed by John Lott's organization, Crime Prevention Research Center. And they filed an amicus brief saying that these laws, by including people who are prohibited from possessing a firearm because they are subject to a protective order or the subject of a protective order, they have no effect on violent outcomes. And he cites a ton of data. Of course, that has no impact on the legal analysis because we know we're not engaged in interest balancing. We know that from the Bruin decision. The court in Bruin said that the interest balancing, that is the interest of the government in regulating a particular activity and the interest of individual citizens and their freedom, doesn't get balanced. It was done at the time of the founding. It was done at the time that the Second Amendment was adopted. So whether or not these particular laws serve some public policy goal is really irrelevant, but it does help defeat that sort of objection that we commonly hear from the media that this is going to give wife beaters a license to carry a firearm.
I've been very neglectful. We've got a lot of comments that come in. I want to get to a couple of them here. Going back to the Ninth Circuit case, Duncan v. Bonta, Robert says, talk about rights delayed. You know, I honestly, if it's going straight to en banc, let's say they get it, they get the case next month or this month. It takes them a year to rule on it, or a little less than a year. We could still get this in the 2024 Supreme Court cases, or would it go beyond that, do you think?
I think there's a good chance that this case gets to the Supreme Court in pretty quick order. I think that obviously it's gotten a lot of attention out of the Ninth Circuit, as the Ninth Circuit often does. The Ninth Circuit has lots of people. I think that there will be disagreement among the circuits, which we've talked about before, that when there's a disagreement between the appellate circuit courts, there's what's called a circuit split. So I think there will be lots of incentive here for the Supreme Court to decide this case and to take it up and issue an opinion. Of course, I think if the court has the composition that it currently has, it will be a decision that's favorable to freedom and individual liberty. But that's the concern always, right, is that the composition of the court could change. Yeah. And that's partly what's going on in a lot of these court circuits, is that the organizations are sort of delaying as long as possible, hoping that the composition of the Supreme Court will change.
And speaking of circuit splits, the other story I found today that on the legal side that I wanted to talk about a little bit was, I got this off of the Effingham Daily News out of Illinois, and the headline: Illinois gun rights groups ask appeals court to review Texas pistol brace ruling. Now, as was up in the graphic, and I'll put that graphic up one more time here, as you can see by this graphic, Texas is the Fifth Circuit, and in Illinois is in the Seventh Circuit, same circuit you're in, Alex. They aren't required to take this into consideration, but there's a lot of positive movement in the Fifth Circuit that the gun right, specifically Illinois State Rifle and Pistol Association is saying, look, this is what's been ruled on in the Fifth Circuit, and these assault weapon bans have fallen, and we think you should apply that here too.
Yeah, I think that the high capacity magazine ban, the so-called assault weapons bans, the obviously we've talked a lot about Mock v. Garland and the pistol stabilizing brace case,
Hmm.
um, cases about whether felons lose their right to keep and bear arms forever are constitutional. I think those sorts of challenges are inevitably going to reach the Supreme Court. And as most people probably know, if they've heard me talk before, I think all federal prohibitions on firearms ownership are unconstitutional because that power wasn't delegated to the government, to the federal government at the time of our founding. So I think that uh, all federal gun laws are unconstitutional. And I think that we'll continue to chip away at them little by little. It's just a matter of strategy, I guess, in terms of which ones get to the Supreme Court first.
Yeah, and how quickly they can get there. Again, my we seem to be for the next uh, year and a quarter. We seem to be safe because nothing will happen until the next federal election to change the Supreme Court makeup, unless unfortunately somebody passes. I don't see anything happening there. We go through one more presidential election. If we lose House, Senate, and President again, we could end up with a 13, 15, 17 member Supreme Court.
Yeah, that was something that was discussed early on in the Biden presidency about the possibility of expanding the court, and he co-opted this study to see what that would look like, and ultimately decided not to take any action in that regard. But if the composition of Congress changes, that's possible. But I think if there's a Democratic president back in the Oval Office next term, they may just wait and hopefully either a justice steps down or they hope that one passes away. I think they may take the safer route. And of course, I'm not hoping for that, but that may be the approach that the next president takes if they're a Democrat. Of course,
Sure.
it may depend on the composition of Congress as well.
Yeah. Well, we have a very slim majority in the House, and it's absolutely evenly split in the Senate with the Democrats in control. Um, we'll have to wait and see, but at least until we go through that election and the next president is inaugurated, the next Congress takes seat in Washington D.C. At least till then, the Supreme Court makeup is safe, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree with that. And Bruin was decided in a 6-3 decision, so there's a little bit of margin there, but not much because uh, Kavanaugh and Roberts are the more moderate uh, justices on the Supreme Court when it comes to the Second Amendment, in my opinion. And so, even if we maintain that margin, I think that the quality of the decisions that we get will be less if we lose one person, for instance, because in order to get uh, the majority to side on the side of the right to keep and bear arms, the opinion may have to be moderated a bit, and that's of course something that we don't want to happen.
All right, I'm going to get one more comment up here. Uh, Anti Second Amendment elected officials play delaying games with unlimited funding, in other words, our taxes, with no personal risk while we fight back with limited funding, and they know it. That's, yeah, and it's the same, and we've discussed this almost ad nauseum in court cases. Uh, they have unlimited funding compared to what we have. And so in these delaying tactics, they can afford to push it and push it and push it down the road. We really kind of need to move.
Yeah, yeah, and unfortunately, there is no personal liability. I was encouraged, though, a little bit by the example out of New Mexico that the governor there, Governor Grisham, I believe it was,
Yep.
The attorney general there said that he would not defend her actions in that case, and he's got an obligation to defend state actors in the state of New Mexico. But he said that his higher obligation is to the Constitution of the state of New Mexico. So I'm hoping that more attorney generals are willing to take that sort of stand to chill these tyrants' ability and willingness to take unconstitutional actions.
On the federal level, we've got Garland, and I will guarantee you he's not going to take that stand. However, on state levels, and the other thing about New Mexico, my understanding is they did away with qualified immunity. And
my understanding too is that the governor was part of that, which is interesting.
So yeah, that encouraged me as well, and was part of the reason she backed down so quickly when the various police agencies throughout the state said, we're not going to enforce this, we're not going to enforce this. And it was one of the reasons she had to back down within a week.
Yeah, it was quickly. And I think as soon as there was the possibility that she might have some personal skin in the game, that changed her tone a bit.
Absolutely. Well, we are coming down towards the bottom of the hour, man. If you would, real quickly, tell us about the Forge of Freedom and anything else you want to plug today, man.
Yeah, so the Forge of Freedom is a podcast I started at the beginning of the year. Obviously, I care deeply about the right to keep and bear arms and individual liberty, but I care more broadly about freedom and passing on a legacy of freedom to future generations. And that can only happen if freedom lives in the hearts and minds of the people. And so I started the podcast with the idea of spreading the ideas and the founding principles behind freedom and helping people to sort of look at the world through that lens. And I think if people understand and they can sort of guard against the arguments that we hear day to day from the mainstream media and from people who like to be ruled by people in government, that we are armed with that information and can help preserve our freedom by spreading that message. So tune into that podcast. It's available on YouTube. It's available on Rumble and also most of the popular podcast streaming platforms. Episode 65 was with my father, Mike Ooley, who's also a firearms instructor and attorney, where we talked about the structure of the federal court system and the Duncan v. Bonta high-capacity magazine case. I'm releasing an episode tonight about a book called War is a Racket. It's a book written by former Marine Corps General Smedley Butler. And then Monday, I'll be back on with my father again. It's our Monday Gun Day episode to talk about legal, firearms-related issues, training issues, basically anything related to firearms and the right to keep and bear arms.
All right, and I do have the link. I just posted it up in the comment section, both on Facebook and YouTube. If you would go check that out, I got the link there in the comment section for you, so it's easy to go check it out. Now, while you're there, subscribe if you would. We need to get those subscription numbers up for Alex. And if you don't mind, while you're subscribing, subscribe right here. Like and share our show as well. I'd really like to grow us now that we are totally under one banner, the Polite Society Podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, everybody, for watching. That's going to do it for us today, and we will see you